Hello and welcome to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Ocran, welcoming you to Ghana's foremost developmental program and that place where the greatest minds in the world converge. Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Ghana and the Enterprise Group with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. So today is a promise kept. A while ago, we brought in Jesse Japan to start the series on finding yourself, and he spent 40% of the time talking about a mentor, his first boss who had impacted his life so much. And when we made that broadcast public, all of you said, where is that man? Is he available to be interviewed? Today, I bring into the studios a man I've known for 50 years, and we are related. Seasoned broadcaster, media educator, actor, carpenter, DIY consultant, and the group CEO of Media General, my friend, my brother, my classmate, or my schoolmate from primary school.
And then Masters.
Eshun-Famiyeh. Good to see you, my brother.
Good to see you, Albert.
We must write a book about our journeys together.
It will be quite circuitous.
Yes. But isn't that how life is?
Yes, that is how it is. We first met in primary school.
Yes.
We met again when I was a Joy.
Mm-hmm.
Then we met again when I joined Kina Pharma and you were in printing.
Mm-hmm.
Then we met again as mates at Masters.
And then the final was the biggest.
And then we finally found out
that we were related.
And that your home name is my grandfather's name.
It's a crazy world, trust me. Let's go back to Jesse's conversation. When you listen to that conversation, I sounded you out that there was trouble coming because Jesse had done a brilliant job of talking about the beans, the learnings, the traveling, the reporting. When you listen to that conversation, how did it make you feel?
Well, Jesse is become a little brother. After I first met Jesse in 2002 or thereabouts, I guess. And by the way, Jesse is Charles's kid brother.
Charles Mensah.
And Charles was a colleague at Joy and has since also become a brother. So that's how I met Jesse. He's since become like a brother. But when Jesse first applied to join us as a national service person, I had met him at a family event and just thought he was a very interesting young man. So it was not with difficulty that we agreed that he could join as a national service person, and indeed would have loved that he had stayed on for much longer than he eventually did. But what did I feel? Well, I have always felt that, like my father always told me, no man is of any use to himself. There's not a person in this world who benefits from just being him. Your only use is in being useful to other people. Jesse was a good learner. And I tell young people all the time that for you to be able to be taught, for you to be able to be mentored, you must be willing to be a mentee. Now, that also means that you must be willing to sacrifice. And because a mentor is not one who is kind to you all the time. A mentor has to be tough on you to extract out of you what you didn't even know existed. And so if you are not humble enough or obedient enough to want to submit to that kind of rigor, then the mentor has no chance. And therefore, it by extension means that the mentoree will then also get no benefits. And so when I see Jesse and what he's done for himself, and I see a lot of young people like Jesse also, and how happy he is and willing to talk about his experience, not just the good ones, because I have also grown to know that a mentor is not a perfect person. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy. You just must have something that a younger person or a less skilled person at that point thinks is worth learning about. So for me, I take pride in people like Jesse and in the fact that they learnt and they also unlearnt what they saw were things that were not what they could go on to learn.
I'll tell you what, I've done this program for 16 years now, since 2008, the 4th of August, I believe, 2008, was a Monday evening. And I'm telling you that throughout that period, I've never, ever seen somebody of their own volition spend that much time eulogizing any person, living or dead. Never has it happened before like Jesse did. And that day, my phone crashed when it was airing. Jesse's phone crashed when it was airing. Your phone crashed when it was airing. It was just a very unusual conversation. And if you missed that day, just go to Facebook, YouTube, and find Springboard Your Virtual University, Finding Yourself with Jesse Ejapong. And that is the foundation on which my conversation with Nuamah Eshun-Famiyeh begins. So Nuamah, you are talking about mentoring and saying that you were aware that in the engagements with Jesse, you were extracting something from him. He tells me that at that time he didn't like you.
No. I mean, it's.
Do you know he didn't like
no,
you?
No, at all. I mean, my duty then was not for him to like me. I had made a promise to his big brother. I had met him. I knew what he was capable of. And I had even noticed there were things about him that he did not know himself. And so my duty was not to be a pleaser.
It's almost like a chess game. I mean, I listened with awe to the recent disclosure by His Majesty Otumfuo about the fact that key players in his life knew who he would become, and yet conspired to send him to Syria, also send him to some places, and then just leave him and keep an eye on him, but leave him to go through the
when they could have given him a softer life.
Yeah, so I'm still now saying it's almost like in the game of life, sometimes you are like a pawn being played in a chess game. Let's know where you are going, but you don't know.
Yeah, but it's just like raising children. If you are too nice to them, then you want them to crash. You have a child. You look at the child's strengths and weaknesses, and you know that this one I don't have to worry about. This is the part where if I am not careful and strict, this is where it will go awry. And so this is where I must ensure that I help you avoid.
Let's talk about finding yourself. How important is it as a person to find yourself? And is it even possible to find yourself at all?
It's a question I've heard many times. It's a question I ask myself many times. I mean, when you read books, when you watch videos, when you listen to other people talk about what it means to find yourself, it means very different things to different people. And for me as a corporate person, you would think that it would have a lot more to do with my corporate life. But for me, finding myself has been predominantly born out of ill health and of learning that for me to survive, I needed to find who I really was and what I really needed to do. And so finding yourself is basically just about soul searching and saying that in this predicament of mine, or in this situation of mine, or in what I want to be able to make out of myself, what is most important? And I get the sense that it is almost a cycle. So finding yourself for me has been a cycle and not an event, because at each point in time, you will come to a decision which requires you to re-find yourself, for want of a better vocabulary. And so that is it for me. It's not an event. It is a cycle that comes at periodic intervals that requires renewed soul searching, readaptation, changes to lifestyle, and a rethinking of things that you used to believe were there, only to find that, look, this is not as important as I thought, or something is more important than that. Or if I just gave up this, I would be better off.
I once said about a rich man who cried uncontrollably at Kolebu. during COVID, when he had to be given oxygen and he was given the bill and he broke down crying and they were asking, do you need subsidy? Can you not
need
afford
help?
it? He says, no. It's just the sudden realization that something I took for granted that God gives us so freely every day can cost this much if man had to give it to me.
Yeah.
So will that be an example of how ill health can make you find yourself and rethink what value means?
True. For somebody who's not had the best of health most of my life, I realize that you are most thoughtful, most appreciative, and most understanding of what really matters when you are unwell. That is when you know what really matters. That is when you know who really cares. That is when you know what you can give up. Because really, at that point, not much makes any sense apart from staying alive and getting back to health. And so it is about deciding that, look, all I care about is to get well. And the only people I care about are the only people who care about me in this state.
Let me pull this into the corporate space or even into the space of social engagement with people. It is obvious that if you are not in somebody's shoes, you will not understand why their priorities and outlook on life are different. Will it then be the case that in leading people, you must have a certain sixth sense that appreciates where people are to be able to move forward with them to your intended destination?
Definitely. I think that over time, leadership has become more about the soft skills than about technical competence. I'm sure the jury is still out, and I'm sure there are a plethora of research papers that will tell us where the preponderance should be. Is it more about technical competence, or is it? But I am sure you also can look back at the people who have made the biggest impact in your life, and you realize that they were not the brightest people. They were not the most competent at what they did for a living. I'm not saying competence is unimportant, no, but you would, on hindsight, always feel that the most impact you have received will be from people who cared the most. So you take somebody who lives in beyond Michelle Camp, and there are many, and works with you in the center of town, and does not have the privilege of a staff bus, and is at the mercy of trotro. A lot of things can happen in any particular day, even when they always leave home at precisely the same time. So the person calculates and says, I have to get to work at 8. So I must be home by 6. There are days when, all things being equal, they'll be lucky. They'll get to work by 8. There are times when, for some freak reason, there's traffic on the motorway.
Freak reason is a standard.
It's a start. The vehicle breaks down. There are more people than usual. There's a fuel hike, so the drivers decide that they are either on strike or they want to finish a meeting with their union before they agree how much they will charge or deploy. So for people like that, they have done all the right things, but whether or not they will get to work on time, it's not up to them. You need to understand that our environment is unfortunately not one with the systems that support everybody to be able to behave as we would require.
So what should a leader do?
Our approach to leadership should be a lot more nuanced. Our approach to leadership should be a lot more circumspect. Our approach to leadership should not be based on just the rules
Let me ask you, Jesse says that when you were mentoring him, you will drive with him on a weekend, mindful that you had done a Michelle camp and had gone through traffic, and yet at 8 o'clock, you would turn and say, where's the report? Or you would point to a room full of boxes, knowing there's a national service person who doesn't know Excel, and say, generate a report in a month. Have you changed as a leader as a result of your experiences?
No,
or this nuance was even there at the time?
This nuance was even there at the time, because even then, you see, you must get the person to understand that he also has to make sacrifices as much as you also, as it were, make adjustments for him. Otherwise, then you end up getting lopsided mentorees who take things for granted.
Did you imagine when you were young that you will get opportunities in broadcasting? Let's talk about the career side of things, in teaching for the BBC, like you have done for how many years now? Several
20
years?
something.
About 20 years, lecturing across the continent, journalist for the BBC, trying things in different aspects, and then leading in the media space. Did you? And then, of course, your pharmaceutical journey, another beautiful one that is also hanging in there. Did you think that you would do things like this when you were young?
No, I mean, I just hoped and prayed that my life would be interesting. But as a child, all I did was, you went to primary school with me, read and draw. That's all I did. And so I knew that I'd be an artist because I read so much. Probably journalism was interesting for me. I hoped that I would be an architect because my father would always take me to sites. I loved buildings, so even when I was a child. But architecture wouldn't have me because my maths then was not as good as it eventually became. That's another story, but I don't even understand how that happened. And so when architecture did not have me and tech kept giving me art and I kept turning it down, I had already done journalism and I had already started work. So at a point, my first boss at Mobitel then said to me that you probably don't need a degree in art to be an artist. Because I got an A levels.
Yeah.
But if you are enjoying this work so much and doing so well, why don't you stay in it and continue what you love as a hobby? And so you know that I have, up till today, I've been everything. I've been a tailor at some point.
Yeah.
I still do interior design. I've built sets for you.
Including the chair you're still on. You do them for fun.
I do them for fun.
Tell you, open life. Open life, you do one hour for fun. Crazy.
Yeah. I do them for fun, and I mean nothing gives me more joy than that. So yes, work is important, and I like to make sure I do a good job. But I also know that my life is fuller because of the other passions and hobbies that I have.
In the mix of all these things, how does one differentiate? Because for everything that you do as a hobby, it also is somebody's full-time work that they've taken to the highest level, and they are on the stage here at Springboard and elsewhere talking about how they found themselves. So within a multi-talented person like you've done, I mean, you sewed for many people for years. You've done stuff in interiors, carpentry, art, journalism, training, coaching. How do you then settle on which one is the anchor and which ones are the supplementary? And can you make a mistake that will be with you for the rest of your life?
You can make a mistake that will be with you for the rest of your life if you miscalculate and you don't figure out which one should be the mainstay and which one should be like a hobby or a side passion but also there's something called timing. And so what may be a part-time hobby side interest today may at a certain point be worthy enough to be your entire life. And that's the way I see it. And it also has helped me always maintain a certain positive disposition, because growing up, I worried about everything. But then once I began to be more active with my hobbies, it has kind of, over time, calmed me down to the point where I worry less, because you must be idle to worry.
So we do recommend it as catharsis for people who...
It is for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So for you who just joined us, this is a major prescription from Nuamah Eshun-Famiyeh, my guest today in the series on finding yourself. He says, if you learn to apply yourself to your hobbies, life becomes fuller and you become less of a warrior. Warrior in terms of the one who worries a lot. Yes, and become calmer in life. So if you are seeing a psychologist, this is a supplementary or alternative route you could find to peace of mind and heart. Engage yourself with your hobbies. What do you like doing? What do you love doing? What will you do even if you're not paid for it? Maybe find it and engage it a bit more, and you will make life more meaningful for yourself. Nuamah, what would you call the turning point, that game-changing opportunity that made you say, this is it. Here we go.
For me, I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate. There have been more than one.
Oh, it's natural.
I have had the privilege of, usually, apart from my closest circle of 3 friends, including yourself, I have always been acquainted to older people. And I think that it has also been very helpful for me. If you will notice, my employers have always been people who have been my clients in my previous job. Kwesi was my customer at Mobitel before I joined him. And Kofinsia was my customer.
That's Kina Farmer.
Kina Farmer at Love and then at Dom before I worked with him for 20 years. I mean, now he's more like a big brother than former boss. So I realized that relationships are what makes the biggest difference in a person's life. I mean, more than your education, more than anything else, it's about how you engaged, the impact you make on people by how genuinely you serve.
If somebody were listening to you and saying, that must be another eureka moment, I know you are speaking from the experiential point, but we still can learn. What, with the benefit of hindsight, would you say you did differently that has become a saving grace or a game changer for you in terms of relationships that you have built? And I know you keep your relationships for a long time. That one I can say from observation.
I'll tell you maybe 3 of them.
Right.
One is, how did I get into well service training? When I worked for multimedia, at the time, there was only Joy. I started Love as the first GM, as a project manager, and then as GM of Love. Joy has had a long relationship with BBC. And so there were visits continuously from the World Service. On one of those visits, I met a lady who was part of a bigger team called Jackie Chambers. She was an editor then, the production side. So we struck up a friendship. We would talk. So over time, she invited me to a training program. I attended. And then on one occasion, she says, we are going to a partner station in Nigeria called Ray Power. On our way back, we'll come through Accra again because we have a few meetings with you and then we'll go. So when she got back, she says, Nuamah, you know what happened? At the time, I'd come from Love to start at Dom in Tema. So he says, Nuamah, something just happened. When we went, we met their new sales manager. And then she said, Jackie, would it be possible to find a GM in a partner station who I can go and job shadow? And so I wanted to find out if it was okay for her to come. So I said, sure, let me just ask Kwesi if it's okay with him. So I said, why not? You know how Kwesi is, very spontaneous. So why not? Let her come. So in 20 minutes, we had agreed that she could come. And she says,
Ray Power to Adum.
From Ray Power to Adum to Job Shadow. So in 20 minutes, we were done. And then she says, why can't she come? I said, she can come today if she wants. Otherwise, she can come tomorrow. So she comes, and then she lived in a hotel. She would join me in the office. We would come to multimedia headquarters in Accra for meetings. We would go to visit clients. We would sit in promotions meetings, productions meetings, programming meetings. And then after it was done and she went back, she sent them a report. Then Jackie calls and says, I shared the reports with my bosses. And then they said, why don't we formalize this?
Wow.
So I said, what would it mean? Then she says, could we let a lot more people visit and job shadow? I said, of course. I mean, we are good. So another person comes. And then 2 months later, she gets in touch and says, you know what? This thing is getting overwhelming. We think there's a simpler way.
Instead of they all stopping their work to come.
Why don't we make a selection in each country and then we'll send you?
Oh, so that's how it was born.
So that was how Media Leaders was born. At the time, it was called The Value of Airtime. And so we conceptualized it together and then started it. And so every year, it became 10 days, about 10, 15 days, we would do a different country. So I would do Nigeria, we would do Tanzania, we would do Zambia, we would do Kenya, we would do Uganda. If we went round, we would do Sierra Leone. I went as far as Somaliland. And so over a 20-year period, it became what I did with my annual vacation, or at least part of it.
So in this instance, what was the game changer from Jackie's point of view?
Well, it was...
What did she see? What did she... You're talking about relationships, why your relationships last and what you do differently in terms of, is it value proposition? Is it the results? Is it the willingness to do it without...
As a person, maybe it's my training. I mean, my sisters, they're all teachers. And I'm one of the few people whose sisters all taught him in secondary school.
Yeah.
One was my English teacher, one was my French teacher, one was... So
it's in the family.
you get me. And so the training is to make yourself useful. And every time I have met somebody, my interest is in whether or not I can be of any use and not what I can gain. I've joked with Kwesi in the past that I have earned more out of radio after I left than what I was paid while I worked for 6 years as a full-time person in the radio business. And it is a lesson I also like to share, that I have found out over the years that transactions don't pay. Transactions don't pay.
Hold it at that point. When I come back from this break, I'm going to ask you, then what pays? If transactions don't pay, then what pays? If any friend, loved one, relation, mentee, mentor, anyone close to you for any reason has missed the first part of this conversation, it is yours truly hanging out with Nuamah Eshun-Famiyeh. He wears several caps, but for the benefit of his employers, he's the Group Chief Operating Officer at Media General. Joining me to talk about the learnings of his life and the never-ending quest to find yourself. And he's just helping us to appreciate that one of the biggest opportunities of his life came from just being available to teach and not seeing it from the transactional point of view. When we come back, let's find out, what was the perspective then? What pays if transactions don't pay? Springboard is brought to you by the Springboard Ratio Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Ghana and the Enterprise Group, with media support from the Multimedia Group, and he's one of the pioneers, and also the Graphic Communications Group, where our good friend Theophilus Yate sits as the editor-in-chief at Daily Graphic. Hello to you, Theo, I hope that you're enjoying this conversation because you will be here soon to tell your story as well. But talking about enterprise group, the question for today is, do I always have to pay for medical services under the Acacia Health Insurance and claim a refund later? If you're on the scheme at Acacia Health Insurance, do you have to make the payment and make a claim later? And the answer is no. Members are expected to use their cards at accredited service providers to get the service and to avoid paying cash unless during an emergency. So what you need is that card to help you access the service, and then you don't need to pay cash except in an emergency. This tip is brought to you by the Enterprise Group, and the number to call to reach Enterprise 030-263-4777, and email is info@myenterprisegroup.io. Enterprise, your advantage. When we come back, where is the cash? If transactions don't pay, where is the cash? Please don't go away.
Pascal's showing his boss the efficient new technology they've installed. She is pleased, but now she's asking, why is that still there? Pascal explains that the wells can store many, many messages. The boss is not so pleased anymore. If you haven't upgraded your contact center yet, it's time to get business done better with MTN Business.
Whether it's 1924, 2024, or 2124, we've always known that you are driven by your sense of safety and well-being. It is what drives us to see you through from start to finish, from small to big. And in the last 100 years, as you have evolved, so have we also expanded to serve you in many ways. From cradle to grave, with expertise in insurance, life, pensions, properties, health, and for those beautiful memorable goodbyes. It's 2024, and in all our markets, our pedigree is recognized, our strength respected, our expertise valued, and our solutions sought by all who desire an advantage in life. Experience the time-tested and truly trusted 100 years legacy of Ghana's oldest insurer. Take charge of your future now. Insurance, life, pensions, property management, funeral services, health insurance. Enterprise, your advantage.
Be informed, educated, and entertained on Springboard Hangout.
We find time to go to Winneba. I'm actually in Cape Coast.
Here in Tamale, to be specific.
Here in Tishamante. Well-manufactured products that are done here in Ghana.
Join host Comfort Ocran for a journey of discovery and inspiration. This and every Friday at 7 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. And don't miss the retelecast on ETV on Sundays at 5 p.m.
Welcome back to Springboard, your virtual university, and to this amazing conversation with my friend and my brother, Nuamah Eshun-Famiyeh, unpacking the story of his life in our quest to find ourselves. One thing that he said in the beginning that I can align with is that no conversation with Nuamah between Nuamah and myself ever ends. So at a point we will adjourn to reconvene at another time. But so far, a couple of lessons that I think will be key for you, and one of them is that being transactional in orientation does not pay. I'm going to come to you to explain that and remind you that if you are looking for yourself and you want opportunities in the agriculture, agribusiness, technical and vocational areas, including the DIY things he's been talking about, the carpentry, the art, and all the things that he does, if you are looking for opportunity in those spaces and you would like questions answered, the Ghana Growth Program is a collaboration between MasterCard Foundation and the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and our partners. If you want answers to any questions around these spaces, we have a hotline, a call center. The number to call is 030-8255-775. 030-8255-775. If you're a young person aged between 15 and 35, You are the person we're looking for, especially if you're a woman or a person with disability. We would like to support you to explore opportunities and go on to live your dream and become all that you were meant to be. What pays, Nuamah? What pays if not transaction? Because sometimes, Charlie, you're what?
We have to decide or agree what payment is. And I want to believe that payment is not always immediate. And I like the analogy of press down, shaking together and running over. If you take it now, you probably take much less than you will get in the future. That's the way I see payment. And so whether payment for you is value or investment or money or an opportunity or promise, it is always compounded when it's delayed. Let me put it that way. If you got it immediately, you end up with a lot less than you will get if you wait for it to be pressed down, shaken together, and run over.
So in the case of the example we just explored before the break, your relationship with the World Service, BBC World Service, and by extension,
Yes.
media leaders, and that very successful experiment, how did this play out in that instance?
It played out in a very simple way. When we had the conversation initially about Faith coming from Lagos to come and job shadow, there was no mention of money. There was no expectation of it. And there was
So what was in it for you?
nothing, just an opportunity to be of help.
But later when it bore fruit,
Yeah,
it became beneficial to you financially.
for years, for more than 2 decades.
Are we impatient sometimes?
I think the younger people, of course, we'll get to talk about younger people.
Well, let's talk about it. Do you think that we sometimes want the... I preached on not too long ago on seed time, waiting time, and harvest time. And the Ecclesiastes says, cast your bread upon the waters, and you find
ye.
after
I prefer
many
the
days,
King James. Ye.
you will find it after many days. do we sometimes cast the bread on the waters and chase the bread?
Challenge.
For instant
In
results?
fact, we follow the bread.
Yeah. Also about right there.
Oh, no, Charlie. We prefer the way chickens are bred these days.
Hot.
And it never really gives you much.
But you will get something.
You may get something, but you will get crumbs.
And the real meat is...
The real meat is in patience. The real meat is in selflessness. The real meat is in being fixated with making the other person satisfied, fulfilled, and impressed. That always pays more.
From your experience in marketing and in branding and also in customer service, as well as this part of you that says, listen, just help people, mentor them. I want to listen to Jim Rohn, who says, while you will help, you will clean the person's windscreen, lift up their wiper blade so that when they come out of the cinema hall, happy, drunk, chewing their popcorn,
they will know
have
somebody
to
was
notice
there.
that somebody
Was there.
cleaned their glass.
Yeah.
Would you subscribe to that notion that, listen, with all that you do, you must make the imprint that you leave be seen and felt?
Yes, but as long as you do an exceptional job, you do not have to make an effort to leave an imprint. An exceptional job, especially in our environment, is bound to leave an imprint. In the environment in which we live, where customer service is generally very poor and very shoddy, even an average job is recognizable.
So an exceptional job.
So an exceptional job cannot go unnoticed. I mean, don't you get surprised when people make it look as if there are no jobs?
Yeah.
Are you not looking for people?
Absolutely.
Everybody I know who is in a position to hire has vacancies he hasn't filled this year.
How do we address the dichotomy between the fact
Has
that there are
vacancies he did not fill last year? Everybody.
And yet there are
And
thousands
yet,
of people looking for
there are
jobs.
thousands of people who say they are looking for jobs. How do you explain it?
How do you know when it's time to pivot from one thing that you are doing to another, or to take something that you're doing as a minor and make that a major? How do you get that timing right?
Circumstances, gut feeling. You see, when it is time, it is as if there's a congruence of events, at least in my opinion and in my circumstances and in my life. There is a certain congruence of events that come together to make that switch or change or diversion or migration happen. Always.
And what kind of eye do you need to be able to appreciate that confluence or convergence?
Sometimes it's experience. Sometimes it is a situation that prompts you. Sometimes it may even be another situation or another event making you know it is time. But even for me, even more importantly, when you move, it is also important to make sure you are moving with what you left, not you are leaving it behind.
What does it mean?
What it means is people like to simplify it to say don't burn bridges. But I like to carry my old bridges. My last job lasted 20 years. Today, it's still like home.
You walk in and out freely.
I walk in and out freely. I get a call about many things every now and then. Nuamah, what about this? Nuamah, do you remember this thing? Nuamah, what do you think of this? And it's not for anything, but it is because I have carried it along. I have carried the relationships. I have carried the knowledge. I have carried the institutional memory, and I have not bent anything.
How do you do it?
By being conscious of the fact that life is longer than work.
Say it again.
Life is longer than work. Work can be very temporary. You are here for 5 years, you are here for 6 years, you are here for 10 years, you are even here till you retire. But your life is longer than your retirement. Even if you work in one place from 30 to 60, the day you go, you have only stopped going to a place from 8 a.m. to 5 a.m. for 5 days every week. But you still have left people who have worked with you and know whether you are reliable, whether you are resourceful, whether you are kind, whether you care about them, whether everything is about money for you, whether you have skills that transcend the work that you were doing, whether there is something you were helping them with outside the work you were doing. And for me, those are the things that matter.
My friend Michael Mensah, he was my best friend in secondary school, and he said one day in passing, don't cut what you can untie.
True.
I years later, about 10 years later, I called him and said, that's the wisest thing I've heard in my life.
Yeah, but that's the same thing we are talking about.
Yes, I know. I'm celebrating him in this fleeting minute. That at the time he said it was just like a passing comment.
Yeah.
But I noted the wording and the crafting as something quite unique. And I asked him to explain it like I always do. But a decade later, I called him and said, Charlie, that thing you said is probably one of the most profound things I've heard in my life. Don't cut
what you can untie. Yeah.
What do you think of it?
Yes, because life is longer than work.
Yeah, they are related. I have wise friends. Let's talk about the role of faith, personal faith, your personal convictions, your personal trust in God. In those moments of uncertainty, in those moments of vulnerability, how does faith come in?
But in those moments of vulnerability, that's all you have. That's all. Nothing else matters apart from what you believe.
And in your journey, have there been moments where you found out that even the things you knew for sure that you had,
you have to rethink? Yeah. You find that even the things you were so sure about, and you say, Charlie, but does God truly love me? This thing I did, will he truly forgive me? what am I going to do if this doesn't work out? Where will my next meal come from? And so faith is probably the greatest of all things. I know the Bible, you are a pastor, you will remind me that it's love, not faith.
But I can relate to what you are saying, and let me just follow up on that. When you've been to that place before where you have nothing but God, and other people see you as a champion, and you say, listen, if you just knew what is going on in my mind and in my relationship with God, you would not even call me a hero, a champion. No. When you've gone through that kind of experience, do you find that you no longer describe life in absolutes?
But life indeed should never be described in absolutes, because there is a wide spectrum in between what we think we know and what we think we don't know, and what we are sure about and what we are not so sure about. In 1 minute, it can go from it's all over to yes, and vice versa. And therein lies the power of the person who holds this world. I remember in one of my many incidents of ill health as a child, and I kept telling my grandmother lived next door to us. And when I say my grandmother, I mean my mother's mother, but It was my father's best friend. So yes, and lived next door to us. And growing up, I was sick so often, I always used to dream that I wasn't going to live long. And I would tell her, if anything I couldn't tell anybody, I'll tell my grandmother. I was the last. And then she would say, Ninya, nyankopone osi iwiasen owonura na nura no so onye nyimpa.
Explain the heavenly language of Fanti.
He says the world has an owner, and the owner is not a man.
Wow. How much did that influence you?
Too much. So even to this day, when things get very murky and turbulent and quite confusing, it is my default mode.
That the owner of this world does exist.
He knows what he's doing.
And it's not man.
Yeah.
Let's swing to how that guides you in reinventing yourself and staying relevant. You talked about transferable skills, but I think it's more than skills. It's also about experiences, outlook. But how do you shine in a role in broadcasting and then find yourself in a different role in, let's say, pharmaceuticals, and then a bit of technology here, or telecoms here, and then a bit of education of some form here, and manage to stay relevant all the way through?
For me, I think it is a simple matter, and it's related to what you call finding yourself. It's about an alignment to your innermost desires and values. And once you find that, the rest is not that complicated. Because once you find that, you are aware what you need technically to do any particular job, which is not the difficult part, because that one, if you don't know, you can learn. The others are innate skills that you know you will need everywhere, but which you need to consistently be improving on. Plus, a continuum of the relationships that you have always had. Because see, you should know that more than me. Your key value as a person is in the closest people you have. It's in the people who, like my father used to say, you can call at midnight.
Absolutely.
But no, that's only half the story. Who will take your call when they know you need them, they don't need you. That's where the complication is. It's about the people who will take your call at midnight when they know they don't need you. How many of those do you have who are wise? It's not how many of those do you have. is how many of those do you have who are wise and useful and will give you good counsel? And if they don't know, will find for you. But as long as you have 1, 2, 3 of those, then you can replicate success anywhere.
Let's talk about the young people of our generation. You and I have been young. I mean, in one sense, we can still call ourselves young, but the reality of our lives is such that
do we qualify?
They've sacked us from the young bracket
exactly.
Quite a while ago. When you see them, knowing that you were once like them, and considering the sense of responsibility that you feel to try and bring out the best in them, what comes to your mind as you look at the unfolding events that young people are encountering? And our time when you went to university and it was like the life was, I mean, in our time when you went to university, there were opportunities. You could see, you could feel, you could know that you could come out and do something. When you look at what's going on now, what goes through your mind?
It's quite a complicated situation, and it's a conversation we can start today, but obviously not end today. When we went to the Institute of Journalism, it was over 30-something years ago, I am sure almost the entire class went on practical attachment and came back with a permanent job to come and finish school and go and do.
Wonderful. I think I know quite a few of those who were in your class.
Yeah. Tioyati.
Yes.
Ajua, Dr. Alasan, Ambrose Ntua, a lot of
and you know the common thread?
No.
They're all doing very well. Extremely well. So that was it.
That was it. Kojoyanke's class of 93, all of us who went, I don't remember who went on attachment and came back to come and finish school and go and look for a job.
Fast forward several years later, would that be the case today?
Hell no. How many people do we graduate a year today?
Well over 130,000 or more.
And also, how many jobs are there? And also, how prepared are they? And also, how much have we tweaked, revised, modified our curriculum to suit the changing times? Me and you talk about the fact that every one of us is looking for, has some vacancies he hasn't filled. Meanwhile, there are thousands of people who are being churned out. So times have changed, and a lot also has to change. I see a lot more young people these days are also not even too interested in formal jobs. If you notice,
yes,
they are a lot more likely to want to brave it out and carve a niche for themselves. I mean, these days people excel globally in areas of life that we never conceptualized was even. I mean, the likes of Afronita. We have.
It's just unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
So that's the plus side of things.
That is the plus side of things. I mean, I get amazed at what our children can teach us.
They take your tablet, your phone, and off they go.
And it's beautiful. But also, there is the downside of it. And I would wish we would be more like the Chinese and the Japanese and the Indians, who are still more in tune with their traditions as a people and are still holding on. As global citizens as they become, they are still holding on to the traditional values that make them special. And how they can study so hard because they are trained to be so obedient and to be so diligent.
Let's promise ourselves that as we adjourn the conversation today, we'll return with one called The Bridge.
The Bridge is
a done deal.
The Bridge is a done deal.
Which part of this conversation have you enjoyed the most?
Oh, as for us, our conversations are always to renew our faith in the fact that things can get better and should get better and will get better. And so no conversation is morbid or unacceptable or more enjoyable than the other. I was telling you about how we have been waiting for 68 years to get 4 train lines. Just 4. one running from the Tema side all the way to Kaswa, one running from the mountains going into central Accra, one on the beach road side. Just 4 lines we have been waiting for 68 years as a country. And how it has incentivized young people, among other things, that also incentivized them to think that, look, there's actually no point sticking around. As much as we promise ourselves that things will get better, like me and you have always said, look, we are also mindful that we are hemorrhaging our talent. I hear of things like the talent visas that people, and I said, look, it's no longer the hustlers who are running.
No, they're coming for the best of the best.
Now they are saying, please, if you are good enough, we'll take. We are inviting you.
We'll factor that into the bridge. But let me sign off from where I began. JC Ejapon came to the studio and said, I will celebrate a person who has impacted my life much more than anyone else, much more than even he thinks. So as we build a bridge, a chain, let me find out, are there people who have impacted your life much more than they think?
Oh yes, many. And they are usually people who were much tougher on me than the people who were kind all the time.
Mention 3 of them to sign off.
Locally, I would say my sisters have been an exceptional influence in my life, the 3 of them, all teachers, all taught me.
Please mention their names.
Iswandi was the last of them. She just retired a few years ago as headmistress of Yasantua. My Kwesichum was so, and still is, so helpful, useful, and still looks out for us. Kofisia was my boss. My client became my boss and has become like a brother. But of course, beyond everything, there will be the 3 of you. There's Albert, there's Tioyate, there's Joel Neti, and they are like
Triplets
in my life.
Nuamah, you owe it to the young people who are listening to you to look into this camera and speak to somebody and give them a word to hold on to as they navigate the journey of life.
Well, to the young people that are out there, I would like for them to know that there has never been a better time, because this is the only time in history where everybody is a global citizen because of technology. That no matter where you are, as long as you excel, and I love the young people for the diversity of their excellence, that no matter where you are, you can be spotted and be transported into wherever your dreams can be best manifested. And for this, I urge all young people to keep whatever talents they have alive. Keep excelling at it, because this is also the only time in history where no matter where you are, you can learn anything. You can know about everything that anybody is doing today, has developed now, without having to see the person, visit the person, or traveled to meet the person. So keep it alive and keep working at it. Remember that, as the good book has always told us, he says that a good and excellent craftsman or worker will come before kings. The kings of today are the techpreneurs of this world. The kings of today, we call them captains of industry across the world. And they are visible to everyone and looking out for talent regardless of where you are.
brilliant note on which to end this incredible conversation time. Number 5.
That's it.
Thank you, Nuamah, for making time for this conversation. And for everyone listening and watching us out there, this has been Finding Yourself on Springboard, your virtual university, a promise kept to bring Nuamah Eshun-Famiyeh, the man who wears several hats, into the studio to talk about himself, his own journey, and the quest to find himself. So many lessons to chew on. Let's continue the debate on social media. Which of them is the most valuable to you? Is it life is more than work, or is it the fact that transactions don't pay? I don't know, but you know which one struck you the most as a jewel to keep for the rest of your life. This has been Springboard, your virtual university, brought to you by the Springboard Ratio Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Ghana and the Enterprise Group, with media support from the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Communications Group. My name is Albert Ocran, saying God bless you, and God bless you.